All right, looks like we are slowing to a trickle here on folks joining, so we'll get started this morning. Thanks everyone for being here, taking some time out of your day to view this TCLAS eGrants webinar with us this morning. I am Alice Keller. I am the Manager of Grant Strategy and Alignment. I support work across a couple of divisions at the agency here, the Division of School Improvement and District Systems and Strategies. And recently I've had the pleasure of kind of supporting some of the work of rolling out this TCLAS grant. So it's been an exciting adventure. This morning with me, I've got Mona Corbett. She's the Assistant Director in Grants Administration. We also have Amy Sumet that will be helping us answer some questions as we move forward and you guys pose those in the Q&A. So a few housekeeping items. Today we're going to walk through obviously welcome and introductions. We'll do a quick TCLAS like holistic grant overview. We'll take a deeper dive look into the eGrant system itself. I'll recap a few next steps, and then we'll go over FAQs that we've already identified and have some time for Q&A for everyone. So you'll see that there's both chat and Q&A available in the Zoom app itself. If you'll drop questions you have in the Q&A, that will help us answer some of those at the end if there's nobody that, if there's some that need to be responded to right away. Otherwise, we'll capture those and post an FAQ along with these slides and this webinar recording on the TCLAS website shortly this afternoon, I hope, is my anticipation. So let's get started on where we're at right now. So TCLAS, as you've seen in the launch webinars, we're in like a three-step process. So step one was that you all completed your award confirmation survey, recommitting to those program assurances for all award support. So that's checked off. We're done there. We're currently sitting kind of in between steps 2 and 3. So you're here completing your program onboarding. There was a slew of webinars, kickoff webinars yesterday. There'll be another bunch happening next week, the 20th and 21st. So you're reviewing those and checking off, as outlined on your PDF attachment, all of those required onboarding webinars. We're also kind of right in the midst of this eGrants application. Our anticipation is that that will go live this afternoon. It is in a testing process with IT right now to make sure there's no bugs or kinks in the system. And then we are hopeful that that will post this afternoon. But there will be a listserv sent out to anyone that receives those from the agency to alert decision makers that those are open and available for us. And that application window does close on October 29th. And when we say these applications are processed on a first come first serve basis, what that really means is that like NOGAs are prioritized based on applications that are submitted earlier in the window rather than later in the window. So everyone will be processed in a timely fashion as grants can allow, but as they come in, they will also be going out. So that's what that means on a first come first serve basis. And just as a reminder, all of this information is detailed in your award confirmation letter and attached PDF to that email. So as you are familiar, you've probably seen this webinar schedule several times. We're sitting right here on 9/17. You're in your eGrants webinar launch currently. And then next week, there are still several decision point webinars that will be hosted by those decision point leads. And then starting next Friday, we'll host eGrants office hours, rolling through the entire length of the application window. So registration links for each of these webinars is available on the TCLAS website. The link is there at the bottom of this slide. And we are posting recordings and slides on that website as well as soon as they go up. So if you've missed some decision point webinars, those are going up as quickly as possible. IT has to process those recordings and get them launched on the website. And they're working on that as quickly as they can for everyone. Again, there are optional eGrants application webinars and office hours over the next several weeks. So there's bit.ly links here for everyone if you'd like to register for those. They are come and go. If you have a quick question, you're welcome to hop in and then hop back out. These are not required. They're optional and supportive of your LEA and those folks that are actually submitting the eGrants application. So our intended audience is those folks on your staff that will actually be working in the eGrants application. They're not necessarily programmatic questions that we anticipate housing in these office hours, but more troubleshooting and technical support for the eGrants system itself. So let's review just high level some of the pieces that you already have by way of your TCLAS grant overview. So in that award email confirmation, you also received a link to a PDF outline of which decision points you were awarded. So this was the second page of that PDF. This is the example of the decision points and what source of funding each will receive, or if they are paid directly by TEA in an in-kind fashion in that last column. So see the first column here is LEA grant award funded by ESSER 3. Any of these cells that have a dollar amount, the LEA was awarded for that decision point. If the cell is grayed out or blank, that LEA was not awarded these decision points. Second column is the LEA grant award funded by our general revenue costs. If there's a dollar amount listed, the LEA was awarded that decision point. If there is a 0, it is blank, or there's an NA, that means the LEA was not awarded that decision point. And then this final column is things that are in kind. So these won't necessarily be things that you are getting a direct grant fund for, but more that you have access to through the agency. So if your LEA was only awarded decision points that are paid directly by TEA, this eGrants process won't need to be completed by your LEA. Only grantees, only LEAs that received funds that are funded by ESSER 3 or by general revenue will need to go through this eGrants process. So here's your award letter, and we created a support tool for LEAs to help complete the budget summary portion of the eGrants application. So it's a budget calculator. You received a copy on your award email. There was an error in that one. So it has been corrected and it is on the TCLAS website. So if you are having a challenge with that budget calculator, return to the TCLAS website and download a new one that's corrected for everyone. And you'll see that it lines up similarly to your award announcement, right? So you have your ESSER award funds listed here and your GR amount here. So you're able to keep those funds separate, and the budget calculator will help you create a budget summary that you can then roll into the eGrant system. Again, this calculator is only a tool for support. It will not be submitted as part of your application. And it's really just to help guide the LEA with some guidance that we've created based on decision points of how we think the money might be best spent by the LEA. The LEA does have flexibility, though, to move beyond what the guidance the TEA gave to best meet the needs of the LEA, as well as meet assurances and outcomes of the decision points individually. So let's take a dive into the eGrant system. So because the system is live, the application is being tested and set up right now. I have only screenshots, so we can't live click through these things, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end if there are any about any steps that might be unclear. So LEAs will begin by logging into eGrants application via Teal login. So if you do not have a Teal login, now would be a great time to go to the TEA website, register for a login application. Folks that typically have Teal logins are superintendents, financial officers, business managers, those types of folks. And you'll find that when you log in, that the TCLAS grant will be listed here on this grant program. If you click here, it will take you to the grants opportunities page with the information about the grant. So in order to actually access the eGrants application, you'll need to click up at the top, hover over apply for eligible grants, and click that piece to move into the actual application in the eGrants system. Once you do that process, all of the eligible grants that the LEA is, all of the open grants that the LEA is eligible for will post at the bottom here. You'll navigate to the 2021-2024 Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Supports TCLAS grant and click on that link to take you to the next step. From there, the first thing that the LEA will need to do is submit the applicant designation certification. This is a standard process for all grants launched in eGrants, and you won't see the actual application until this piece is finalized and submitted. So the LEA will click here to begin the process. And the first part is the designation that you are in fact applying on behalf of the LEA. So there are not SSA, shared service arrangements, allowable for this grant. So these two cells will be grayed out. The LEA will then click these radio buttons based on if they have funding from ESSER 3 or GR and state that they are applying on your own. If your LEA is only being funded from one of these funding sources, the other funding source will be grayed out and you won't have access to click that radio button either. But this example application has funding from both TCLAS ESSER 3 and TCLAS GR, as you can see here. So at the bottom of this page, the LEA will certify and submit that they are the applicant that is applying. Once that happens, we'll turn back to this kind of navigation page, and the application will drop right below that designation form and open for LEAs to access. The LEA will click onto that link, 2021-2024 Texas COVID Learning Acceleration Supports, and open the application. So the first start portion is the GS 2100, that's the applicant information. It'll be the first thing that LEAs have to do before any of these other pieces open for the LEA. So before you can move to the program budget, start at the top and work your way down, you've got to start with general information, the applicant information. And these are pretty standard things. So the applicant part 1 will auto-populate for you based on your login information. So you'll see this example is Beaumont ISD. Thanks, Beaumont, for being our example district this morning. And these things will auto-populate for the LEA, so there won't be any opportunity to change this top portion. The part 2, applicant contacts, will need to be completed by the LEA. So you have two choices when you get to this point. If you have your primary and secondary contact already loaded into this eGrants application, you'll be able to navigate to the select contact dropdown and select one of the contacts here. If you need to add a new contact, if you've had a change in staffing or an update, you'll have to add a new contact with this button here in order to be able to then select them from the dropdown. And as a note, your primary and secondary contact need to be different individuals. The system will not allow you to put the same individual in both A and B here because we want to make sure that we have plenty of folks to reach out to if there's a challenge with your application. So once applicant information is complete, the rest of the pieces of this application will open up. So the next piece that we'll start with is this PS 3013. And this is a program plan. And because we've tried to be really diligent about making this application as simple as possible for you guys as LEAs, because we know this is a really heavy lift. This PS 3013 is only checkboxes, and it's really just a verification of assurances that you're committing to as an LEA applying for the TCLAS grant. So these are required assurances, and the LEA will have to select all of the checkboxes to indicate compliance with required assurances. You must check all of these checkboxes or the application won't let you complete. I've kind of blown them up here for everyone to see, but these are the same assurances that you saw in the guidance document, the same assurances that we've been discussing along the way at webinars. So these shouldn't be unfamiliar to you, and you can also find a copy of these in the TCLAS guidance document. The only addition is this last little bubble here that is that your limit on direct administrative costs as applicable outlined in the TCLAS guidance document. As you complete 3013, the next piece that you'll open is equitable access and participation. And again, this is a standard piece in all grants coming from the agency. So this PS 3400 will just be a simple checkbox of if there's any barriers to access to this program for stakeholders, either teachers, students, or staff. And so that's pretty standard. So we're not going to review that for time's sake today. The next piece that you'll jump into is the program budget summary, this BS 6001. This will be the first piece that an LEA needs to complete before they can move down to these other schedules, because this puts in total dollar amounts for each of the schedules along the way. So as you open this BS 6001, again, you'll see these two columns, and this shouldn't be entirely unfamiliar for most folks. If you've completed the ESSA consolidated application or the SPED application, you'll see multi-columns of different source of fundings. So this shouldn't be completely unfamiliar, but you'll see $2 amounts based on award for the LEA in TCLAS ESSER 3 or TCLAS GR. And you'll see that the fund codes are here. I'll also name these a little bit later, but fund codes are listed there at the top. And then there's a final amount listed for, as LEAs are eligible and awarded, final amounts for ESSER and for GR. And this is where the LEA will start the process of budgeting these pieces. So they'll move down and drop in to the bottom portion of this, part 2 here, budgeted costs for each of the budget object codes along the way. You'll see that there's a few lines like 6,500 that are grayed out because debt services are not allowed on this. So they're on this grant program. So there won't be an opportunity to budget anything in there. It's grayed out, so you won't be able to access it. But again, this lines up directly to your budget calculator if you've used that tool. Oh, I apologize. If you've used that tool. So you should be able to take budget calculator things that have dropped into each of these budget object codes based on guidance or your adjustments and enter dollar amounts into each of these budget object codes for both TCLAS ESSER 3 and TCLAS GR. I blew this up here just so everyone could see with a little bit of an example of dropping dollar amounts into each of these budget object codes. And you'll see the red money, the red indication here is total funds available minus total costs. So what we've budgeted here is reduced each time you enter a dollar amount into a budget object code. So there's still $500 remaining here to be budgeted. As I dropped in dollars into each budget object code, that changed to $0. So you knew you had budgeted all costs associated with this source of funding, the TCLAS ESSER 3. Once you complete the program budget summary and support the BS 6001, the rest of these will become accessible. The payroll costs BS 6101, professional and contracted services 6201, other operating costs 6401. Debt services, as I said, is not allowable, but we'll discuss that in a second. And then capital outlay at 6601. So you must complete budget summary first before you're able to access these other budget object code schedules throughout the rest of the grant application. So just as a quick example, the BS 6101, which is the payroll schedule, again, is intended to be as simple as possible. So as money is budgeted into this schedule, the LEA will then enter into this specific budget schedule and indicate which types of positions will be funded from any dollars that are budgeted in 6100. And if there's costs in each of these, they'll indicate those staff positions in both ESSER and GR as funded by the LEA. So unbudgeted or unallowable schedules, if that happens, if you end up not budgeting anything in, let's say, payroll costs, and you click on that budget schedule, you will get an error that says no costs are budgeted for that specific budget object code. Or if you click on 6500, which are capital debts, debt services, it will give you the same error that says there is no need to fill out this form because these costs are not allowable. And it will just indicate that you need to save the form to complete it, but you won't be able to enter any data into this 6500 capital debts portion, or you won't need to enter any data if you haven't budgeted any costs in a particular budget object code. So the last piece of the eGrants application, which again is hopefully as simple and streamlined as possible, is the certify and submit the application. So the LEA will enter into these provisions and assurances, check all provisions and assurances boxes as applicable, paying close attention to number 5, whether or not the LEA needs to complete a lobbying certification. These blue bubbles on the right are all live links to these documents. So if there's questions about what are the general and fiscal guidelines, easily accessible here is through a link that will automatically download that PDF for the LEA for each of these assurances and certifications. So it was a kind of a high-level overview of eGrants application. Hopefully it's not unfamiliar to most of you on this webinar this morning. And again, if there's challenges, don't hesitate to reach out, but we are having office hours as part of our next steps to support you guys in this eGrants application process. So right now we're live walking through TCLAS eGrants process. There are those 4 optional Q&A office hours sessions that will be hosted by me, and then we'll have our colleagues from grants administration there to help answer any other technical questions that you all may have. And then there is that resource of the eGrants budget calculator that we provided. That is, again, just a tool and a resource and not necessarily something, it won't be required as part of your grant submission and not required as part of your budgeting process either. I've seen that there's a couple of questions. I'm going to get to some FAQs that we've already had, but yes, presentation and slides will be posted to the TCLAS website at the conclusion of this webinar. We hope to get them up very quickly this afternoon. So if you need those links, they're also on the TCLAS website, but they will be live in this slide document whenever that goes up as well. So let's review. We've had several questions come into the TCLAS website and a few that we had several times. So I wanted to make sure that we were naming those that were major concerns for LEAs. And then I will have plenty of time at the end of this for you all to ask some questions or me to answer some of these questions that have come into Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A part of this Zoom webinar. So biggest question that we've received lately is why didn't we get a decision point? There's kind of 3 major reasons, right? Awards were prioritized based on funding methodologies for each decision point and priority points for those decision points. So an LEA might not have been awarded because of vendor capacity. That was a big piece. Vendors can only support so many LEAs, students, and teachers, and we just met those capacities pretty quickly with this application. Additionally, LEA might not have been awarded due to not meeting some of the prerequisites for the award. So although you might have applied, it was determined during the review process that not all prerequisites were met, and then an award was not granted. So another major question we've asked is about pre-award allowability. So because this grant is funded from 2 different funding sources, ESSER 3 and GR, pre-award costs are allowable kind of in a different capacity for each of those grants. So any decision point that is funded from ESSER 3 has allowable pre-award costs starting on March 1st, 2021 to the stamp-in date of the application. And stamp-in date is really the date that your application is submitted in the eGrant system. Any decision point funded from GR has allowability for pre-award from September 1st, 2021 to the stamp-in date of the application. And again, stamp-in date is the date that the application is submitted in the eGrant system. So this language can also be found in the TCLAS guidance document, and well as the slides from today's webinar, and will also appear in the program guidelines when that posts. This says next Friday, but our anticipation is this afternoon that grant will post in eGrants. A few more FAQs. TCLAS LEA grant funded by ESSER 3 is different than the district ESSER funds. So lots of LEAs received direct ESSER funding grants from the agency. This TCLAS grant is funded from the agency's ESSER 3 discretionary funds and will be separate from the LEA's individual ESSER funding. So you will not need to be thoughtful about reserving some of your own ESSER 3 funds to do some of this TCLAS work. We need to update contacts. We submitted our survey, our contact has now changed, we entered the wrong person. We can absolutely update contacts for each decision point or your primary contact. Please email the TCLAS inbox with the decision points or whether or not it's the primary contact. Name, email, and phone number of the new person, and we can get that updated for everyone. I named this a little bit earlier, but the fund codes for TCLAS are as follows. ESSER 3 is 279, and the fund code for TCLAS funded GR decisions is 429. And the last page of FAQs. So does the LEA need to maintain compliance documentation per decision point? So yes, the LEA will need to maintain documentation locally to meet awarded decision point outcomes and assurances. And if you have greater questions, more in-depth questions about specific documentation needed for a decision point, those will be provided during decision point webinars for each of those specific decision points. And what strategy, this is a big one, what strategy will TEA implement if the LEA cannot meet expectations and assurances of the grant? We understand that this is a huge and heavy lift for LEAs. So we will work to support LEAs that are struggling to meet outcomes and assurances of decision points. While this process hasn't necessarily been finalized about what that support is going to look like, LEAs should stay in constant communication with us at TEA to ensure that available resources and support, as well as technical assistance, can be offered to LEAs that are concerned about not meeting outcomes and assurances, or that are already having challenges meeting those outcomes and assurances. Like I said, this is a huge lift from you at the LEA, and it's intended to have a really large and lasting impact on learning for your students and requires a lot of time and effort from you and your staff. So if after today's webinar, the LEA has hesitation about meeting any of the requirements or assurances, we'd really like to encourage you not to complete the eGrants application. We'd like to start by offering support at the front end and see what we can do to adjust your needs and expectations of what the grant outcomes and assurances are before you complete the eGrants application. If you do not believe that your LEA can fully commit to all requirements and assurances that you've already submitted that survey on, please immediately send an email to the TCLAS website so we can start that support process for everyone. We want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable and supported through this process, as we know what a huge and heavy lift this was, and what a significant amount of time and effort it's taken on behalf of you and your staff. So I think that brings us kind of to the end. Left plenty of time for Q&As. I'm going to take a brief pause and look at Q&A. Mona, unless you identified something that has come up pretty frequently that we might be able to answer really quickly.
I have answered a few kind of questions that I know we receive in grants. So there's a few in the answered tab that I have responded to. There is one that I started to answer. It says, do we need board approval for these eGrants? They're in the provisions and assurances of a grant application. There's something that you're signing off on that's part of any grant that TEA has, and it's required under GEPA, which is our General Education Provisions Act. It's a federal thing, and it says you must make any application, evaluation, or program plan or report related to this program readily available. And so it does not say you must have board approval. However, it may be a district policy that you get board approval. So you need to know what your district policy is when you're applying for a grant application. On our ARP ESSER 3 grant, that's the formula grant that everybody's applied for already, that we're already working on. I think there were some pieces in there that required some additional planning and involvement of others. Alice, maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Is there any piece of this TCLAS, or if they're applying, especially under the ARP funding for TCLAS, if there's a requirement for any other participation by board, parents, other stakeholders?
No, there hasn't been any specific requirements for board approval or stakeholder engagement in the process.
Okay, so so I will send what I've done, and let's see, a couple of people have asked, as I'm looking through here, they say, just double checking, for example, if we are receiving decision 3C decodables, we do not have to do eGrants.
Correct. So if your LEA is only awarded what we're referring to as in-kind funds, decision points that are subsidized by the agency. So what that means is the agency is paying directly to those vendors and you're just receiving the services from the agency and not direct grant funds, you do not need to complete the eGrants application.
Okay. And there was another question similar to that, and I just need to find it. But there had been a couple of questions that if they were getting funded for certain decision points, do they need to do eGrants? So that might be one.
Yeah, let me shoot back to the award memo really quickly. Give me 1 second. So I'll answer that one. I'm gonna avert your eyes if it's gonna make you dizzy when I click back through this really quickly. I apologize. I wasn't totally sure how to just go directly to this one. So as I said, so this is an example award letter. So as LEAs were awarded decision points or not, they would see this in their award letter, LEA grant award funded by ESSER 3. So these are direct grant costs that are coming to an LEA. This LEA was awarded 3B in the amount of $30,000 and vetted Texas Tutor Corps in the amount of $400,000 for ESSER 3. This LEA was also awarded general revenue funds for decision 3E, Texas College Bridge, in the amount of $6,521. So this LEA will have an eGrants application to complete for these two total amounts of funds. Anything here in this last column, which is LEA awarded supports paid by TEA, if the LEA is only awarded things that are in this column, they do not need to complete the eGrants application process. Or as this says, this district was awarded 3C decodable text as well, awarded kits, details below for total volume awarded. This decision point won't appear or won't be funded directly to the LEA. The kits will be coming directly from TEA to the LEA. So they won't need to like budget for these kits at all. It will be in kind or paid by the agency and then supplied to the LEA. I think that captured that. Mona, was that?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Perfect. I see a few. Yes, we're anticipating that eGrants application will post or go live this afternoon and is currently being tested by IT for bugs and kinks and things like that. And we are hopeful that it will post live this afternoon. So feel free to check back. We're also going to send a list serve to all LEAs to alert those folks that are signed up for TEA listserv announcements that the application has gone live. So once that happens, once it's live, the listserv will go out and you will be able to enter into eGrants and submit your application. And yes, correct. So on this same document, if there's a section that's grayed out, you'll see that like, for example, 3C decodable text, these two cells are grayed out because they aren't funded directly with grant funds. They're only in-kind supports. So kind of similarly up here, like 1B data strategy full-time position is funded by ESSER. So this cell on that same line for general revenue is grayed out as that we wouldn't have seen a dollar amount here. This blank though indicates that the LEA was not awarded for this decision point.
Okay. Alice, I'm seeing several questions in the same frame here. That's basically, once we submit the budget, may we go back in and make amendments as needed? Or after you do the budget summary, can you move money as needed from where it was placed? So basically amendment. And then there's one other one that's a little different, but if you want to, is there anything specific you need to address about the budget and amendments?
Yeah, thanks, Mona. So yes, you're going to submit an initial budget and the LEA has flexibility to submit amendments as needed throughout the grant process. So following all other kind of grantee rules. Mona, correct me if I'm wrong. An LEA can move up to 25% of the total grant award throughout the life of the grant without making an amendment. Once you've reached that 25% limit, you do need to submit an amendment to move grant funds. However, grant funds cannot be moved from a budget object code into another budget object code if there's not already funds there. So you couldn't move funds to a budget object code that didn't originally have any funding budgeted in it. Am I saying that correctly, Mona?
We have a when to amend document, and it lists all the different reasons for when an amendment is required. I just wanted to be sure with you, based on how the decision points are aligned here and such, that you didn't have any stipulations on that. Otherwise, our regular amendment rules apply, and our negotiation staff can certainly assist you with those amendment rules. But yes, the one rule that you explained just then is correct. We do still have that 25% of the total award, and it'll be total award of each fund source. So you're basically getting a grant, if you will, funded out of ESSER 3, out of the ARP money. You're also being funded out of general revenue. And I believe those are counted, you'll almost like have two different NOGAs or two different lines on your NOGA. And so they're almost considered separate awards, if you will. So you have to look at that. You have to look at each award. And yeah, over the course of the period, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alice, we'll start, this will be like a 3-year grant period, right? It starts in 21 or in 22. I don't remember the beginning, the start date. I think it depends on when you submit. And then it goes all the way through the year 2024. Correct. So that was also one question that was in the Q&A. So hopefully that helped you. But over that period, you may be making little bitty changes at the local level. But once you hit a period where you have changed or increased various class object codes by more than 25%, you have to submit an amendment to get your budget realigned, if you will. Otherwise, you will have trouble in drawing down your funds out of expenditure reporting, out of ER. Okay, that's where it catches you. So be sure to keep a close eye on each one of your budgets. And once you hit that 25% of the total award, that you're submitting amendment. Now, remember, once again, there is a when to amend document. There are other reasons for amending the grant application. And so the negotiation staff will be happy to help you with that. And so you can give us a call.
Thanks, Mona. I think there's a few like technical questions. Yes, you're able to access the eGrants application and begin and save in progress. You don't have to complete the application in totality in one sitting. You're able to save and kind of return back. Onboarding webinars are being posted as quickly as possible. I know some of you on the coast are out of electricity and might be out of school for the next couple of days. So those are being posted as quickly as possible to the TCLAS website. So please keep checking back frequently. I believe the award webinars are posted. I'm not sure if any decision point webinars from yesterday, as of this morning, they weren't, but they should be very soon. Yes, pre-award costs are documented separately on the application. As you get into the application, there'll be a separate kind of column for pre-award costs, inclusive of Pre-award costs are part of, not in addition to total grant funds. So you'll select your portion of pre-award costs and budget it into those, that column identified as pre-award. I think we've answered a good portion of these. Anything that I haven't captured live, we will capture these questions and post an FAQ so everyone has access to all the answered and ones that we haven't gotten to just yet. Thanks, yes, and the budget calculator document that you received via the email award notification did have an error in it. So if you're having challenges with either color coding or some other error in that document, please go to the TCLAS website and download the budget calculator again. Those errors are corrected in the updated version. Okay, if there's, I'm not seeing any other questions, Mona. I think there's a couple about the 25%, but I think you captured all of those. Mm-hmm. If you have specific questions around a decision point, please reach out to the TCLAS inbox. We can direct you to the correct decision point lead. Don't forget to check all of the registration links. There are some that are embedded in other decision points. So if you are missing a decision point, we're not seeing it on the website. Some of them are kind of collapsed together for like digital access specifically, like decision 6 was embedded into 2 and 3 on that one. So be sure to just thoroughly read that. And as always, like, we're here to support. So if there's questions or concerns, please email the TCLAS inbox and let us know how we can best support you along the way. I apologize. Best support you along the way. Again, if there is any issue with or concern about not being able to meet requirements and assurances, we highly recommend that you not complete the eGrants process. It's going to be easier for us to help support you if you haven't completed the application at that point. And if you are hesitant about fully committing to any requirements or assurances that you've already submitted a survey around, please reach out to us at the TCLAS support email box, tclass@tea.texas.gov, so that we can help support with technical assistance and guidance around how to best meet assurances and requirements. Thanks, everyone. Again, this webinar will be posted as soon as possible to the TCLAS website. I appreciate everyone attending.